lost ledger. John Doe was the kind of man people passed on the street without a second glance. He blended into crowds, spoke softly, and lived alone on the fourth floor of an aging brick apartment complex that overlooked the river. For most of his life, John had been content with that quiet existence until the morning he found a leather-bound ledger. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. John was walking to the small insurance office where he worked, umbrella trembling in his hand as the wind pushed against him. Outside the old Harrington Library, something skidded across the sidewalk, a thick, dark book, its corners withered, its cover stamped with a faded crest. John bent down and picked it up. There was no name, no title, no identifying mark except for the crest, a shield wrapped in vines, a single star in the middle. He opened it out of curiosity. The pages weren't blank. Instead, each one held meticulous handwritten entries, dates, times, names, and short cryptic notes. Some were familiar dates from earlier that year. Some entries described events John vaguely remembered seeing on the news. One entry in particular made his fingers go cold. May 18, 12:14 p.m. JD pauses before crossing. Lives. John stared at the initials. JD. It could have meant anyone, he told himself. But May 18th had been the day he stepped off the curb into rush hour traffic, distracted, only to stop at the last second because he had dropped his coffee cup. A car had flown past him so close he felt the rush of its wake against his jacket. Coincidence, he muttered, closing the book. But the moment he shut it, another line from a page he'd glimpsed flickered in his memory. June 3, 9:02 p.m. Apartment lights flicker. He finds the key. John's apartment lights had flickered the night before, but there had been no key. He shook himself. He didn't have time for mysteries. He was already running late. The rest of the morning passed uneventfully, though John kept glancing at the ledger tucked into his desk drawer. By lunchtime he couldn't resist any longer. He pulled it out again and flipped ahead a few pages. Then he froze. November 20, 4:17 p.m. He opens the door. Everything changes. Today was November 20th. And the time was 3:42 p.m. John closed the ledger slowly, his pulse rising. Whatever the book was someone's prank, a strange diary, a statistical log. It shouldn't have known anything about him. And yet, the handwriting had described his near accident, the flickering lights, and something else he hadn't admitted to anyone, that he had been feeling increasingly restless, as though something in his life was about to break open. He waited until 4:10 p.m. before standing. The office was quiet. Most co-workers had already headed home early because of the continuing rain. John slipped the ledger into his coat and walked toward the exit. He reached the front door at 4:16 p.m. He hesitated. He opens the door. Everything changes. John pushed it open. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky glowed with the pale violet of early twilight. A woman stood beneath the awning, a tall woman with dark hair braided over one shoulder, holding an umbrella she didn't seem to need anymore. She looked at him as though she had been waiting. John Doe, she asked. He blinked. Do I know you? No. But I know that's yours. She pointed to the ledger peeking from his coat. And I know you've read it. John's breath caught. What is this thing? She stepped closer, lowering her voice. It's a record of choices and the moments that shape them. The ledger writes itself. Always has. It doesn't predict, it remembers early. And it shows itself only to the person whose path is ready to change. That sounds impossible. So does finding a book that knows you almost got flattened by a sedan in May. She smiled faintly. Come with me. There's more to explain. John hesitated. Every instinct told him to step back, return to the familiar safety of his desk, pretend this day had been normal. But another part of him, the quieter part he had ignored for years, leaned forward. "Where are we going?" he asked. "The archive," she said. "Where the ledger began." John took a deep breath and followed her down the steps. They walked toward the river, where mist was rising off the water. The woman spoke as they went. "You are not the first to receive a ledger. They appear when someone is at a crossroads, when a choice approaches that will matter more than they understand." "What kind of choice?" John asked. "That," she said, "is something only you can answer." They stopped at a narrow stone doorway set into the riverbank, one John had passed 100 times without noticing. The woman pressed her hand to a symbol carved in the stone, the same crest from the ledger. The door opened with a soft whisper. John stepped inside. The air smelled like old parchment and candle smoke. Shelves stretched into the dimness, each holding dozens of ledgers identical to his. Some glowed faintly, as though alive. "This is impossible," John whispered. "Maybe so," the woman said. "But so is the life you're about to step into." John looked down at his ledger, then out at the endless shelves. For the first time in years, he felt not invisible but anchored, connected to a mystery larger than himself. "What happens now?" he asked.